Hello, Ryan Fritz here with Science of Cardio, doing a comparison of the VALD ForceDecks and the Kinvent K-Deltas. So I've been using force plates and also dynamometers for over 3 years now. I've been able to practice and experiment with both systems very well. So I'll kind of do a comparison, and then at the end I'll give you a review of what I think is professional recommendation for which one to go with. So let's start out with VALD. This is in no order. So VALD is great for teams and group testing. Saves a ton of time. You can set up groups and number of athletes in a kind of back-to-back test. So you'd have a person on deck, a person in the hole, and you'd have them do like a counter movement jump. And so they would hop off and the next person would go. So you can have all their profiles set up in a order and go through testing very quickly. Kinvent does not have that. Kinvent is the K-Deltas. They are designed for more of an individual approach, but you can still do them with teams. So both systems use an auto detect. VALD calls it auto detect and Kinvent calls it smart mode. So you can do multiple tests kind of back to back and get information and use it and save it in the profiles and go back and reference it later on. One of the perks that the VALD ForceDeck has, is it has a kind of a foot leveler on the bottom of the plates, which is really cool. If you have an uneven floor or maybe a ridge or a hump in the floor, you can use the foot leveler to level it out. This is something that Kinvent doesn't have. I use both systems and I've never really had a major issue with Kinvent, but that's just kind of FYI. So some of the things that both systems do is they are great for diagnostics, great for jumping and kind of plyometric testing. From my personal experience, testing will only get you so far, but it opens up a lot of information, a lot of doors, and takes you down, I would say, more scientific pathways for figuring out solutions to clients or patients. And so this, newer technology with ForceDecks and dynamometers is very helpful, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the future of it because there's so much benefit and objective data, and also you can kind of use evidence-based information to make decisions on which direction to go and then what to prescribe or do or use as perturbations for solutions to problems. So I'll get into kind of the cons. There's a couple things that I'll let you know from my experiences. One of the things that I find really annoying is the VALD system has kind of multiple steps that you have to do to analyze software. So you can test on an iPad or your phone, but you have to upload the data to a web server or kind of their cloud-based, it's called the VALD Hub. And so you can use that for analyzing and viewing your tests. I find this a bit annoying. If I'm on my iPad, I have to go into internet web browser and then type in my password, username to get in to look at the analytics. And so that's just me. That might not be a deal breaker for somebody, but it's a time suck. I don't like it. I have not used the VALD system with a PC, so it's kind of designed on more of that PC so you can plug it right into your computer. So that's probably definitely just straightforward setup. So I'll have to look into more of that. As far as the Kinvent, one of the things I said kind of earlier is that don't have that foot leveler. So if you have an uneven floor, it might give you issues with the test results. Nothing major, but it could be a issue. There's another thing. So with the VALD, you have kind of normative data that you can look up and compare your kind of age or athlete demographic to similar age or athletes. Kinvent allows you to, so you can custom enter or upload normative data. So this, if it's good information and good sourced, I think it's cool. You can kind of pick and choose what and how you use it for who and when and where. But if you get bad information, there might not be as much specificity with it. So just food for thought. You can kind of run with that however you want. So some things that I really like about the Kinvent system is you have ability to do custom exercises. And so the VALD system pretty much is kind of standard. And so they have a ton of exercise tests, but I have found that there are certain things that I want to do with my clients that aren't in the VALD testing bank. And so Kinvent has this open kind of forum that you can use for making custom exercises. Another thing I really appreciate in the Kinvent system is when you test, they have a notes section. So you can write in notes under the exercise as for references later down the road. I find this very helpful. If I have a problem with a test, somebody compensated or they moved, I'll put notes in. Also, if you are having trouble labeling or doing something with the test, you can at least put information. You know, I messed up and this is a 45-pound bar and the test said it's 135 pounds. But that is very helpful. I really like that ability to do that. Also, the other really cool thing that Kinvent has is it's called training mode. And so this allows you to kind of work out. And so you can go through and set or prescribe different intensities. You can do different, right to left load challenges. And then you can really dial in the specificity with program design prescription for each of those. So VALD does not have a training or workout mode. And so it's basically just straight testing. Straight testing's okay, but I like to use the training mode as far as the workout in session, and I can go through and dial in people's information, their kind of weight or load protocols, and then I can progress it. So it'll save or store the last test you did or training mode or workout. So if you're doing like a bicep curl and you were pulling 50 pounds with the right arm and the left arm, I can go in and say, okay, I'm going to do 51 pounds. It'll record and save that. So I go back into it, it's kind of already set. So I know that, hey, we've already done this and I should either stick with this same kind of load or I can go up. So that's super helpful. I think that's the game changer. And so you can do really neat overload progression with that. I'll compare the force traces. So I'm not super impressed with the VALD force trace. It's super basic. Unless you're an exercise physiologist or have a ton of experience looking at force traces, there's not a lot of layman, easy kind of new tester or kind of a new person to force plates. They're going to kind of struggle with, what do I do with this information and how do I convey it to my patients or clients? Now on the flip side, I think Kinvent does a great job. Their force trace have breakdowns of kind of jumping, landing, eccentric, concentric, propulsion, braking, stopping, and it kind of gives that for each rep. There's visual, aids that go with those. So it's a lot easier to explain that to clients and patients. And so I think that's a huge selling tool to the Kinvent software. I think as far as the hardwares go, both of these systems are very similar. I haven't noticed a huge problem or issues with either system, but I think the really takeaway big piece professionally and from my experience is the softwares. So another thing that I found that's kind of a pet peeve of mine, this is just my opinion, the VALD system, they run their force in newtons, and I don't feel like this is super practical. I get the idea, force, but you can't take a Newton measurement and put it into a squat rack or a gym machine very easily unless you have the right tools to do that. And I get it from the lab, side of things, sciencey, but I really like that Kinvent allows you to do it into kilograms or pounds, so you at least can use it as a reference of like, hey, we can go into this barbell exercise or machine with X pounds, and you're doing roughly or averaging blah. And so that is kind of a pro-con. So both systems do quiet stand reports, force traces. The VALD system, their quiet stand report is pretty much useless. There's not a lot of good feedback you can get from it. The Kinvent, I think, is a lot more helpful. They give you a lot better visual reports and ways that you can kind of convey that imbalance or asymmetries to clients. And I think that they can see it in visual and understand it better. So that is super helpful. Another thing I really like about the Kinvent system is it allows you to test multiple devices at the same time. So in other words, you can test up to 5 devices in one report or test. And so you could put the goniometer on your leg, and you could do a squat test on the force plates. You could put the K-myos, their EMGs, and have them running while you're getting range of motion and force. So super, super cool. I don't think that VALD does that. Everything's kind of segmented. And so that is, again, another huge attribute that Kinvent has that I think is very user-friendly and easy to use and kind of represent and take to the client. Also, it saves you a ton of time. You don't have to do 5 tests. You can do 1 and get everything in rock and roll. So as far as the big thing, so one of the other things I noticed is the VALD system, their software, they allow you to do a ton of KPIs. And so they get a ton of data points, ton of information. To me, it's overwhelming. There can be too much information that is not really relevant. And so, I think there's maybe 3 to 5 things that you can kind of take away, correlate, use, extrapolate, and that are helpful. I think when you get into hundreds of KPIs, it just gets overwhelming. I think Kinvent does a great job with putting the right information in front of you, giving you visuals for relevant, data points. And I think that can get a little overwhelming with the VALD system. Hello, Ryan Fritz here with Science of Cardio. I'm doing a comparison and a review of the VALD ForceDecks and the Kinvent K-Deltas. So these are both force plates from different companies. And what I've noticed is the hardware, they're very similar, but there's a big difference in the software. And so they do kind of different setups. So the VALD system is kind of more of a group or team or athlete setup. So they have actually group testing where you can enter in, a bunch of clients or athletes' profiles and set it up for a group. So essentially you'd have somebody hop on the plate, do a counter movement jump, and then the next person will come, do a counter movement jump. So you can run through a ton of people real fast. Kinvent does not have that. It's more of an individual practitioner platform. So that's kind of something different depending on what you're using. You can still do things with people pretty quickly with the Kinvent. So both of the systems have an auto detect mode on the plates. VALD calls it auto detect and Kinvent calls it smart mode. So you can do multiple tests. So counter movement jump, single leg counter movement jump, different things in a row so that you're streamlining and saving a bunch of time. So one of the things that I noticed with the VALD ForceDeck hardware versus hardware versus the Kinvent is the VALD system has a foot leveler and the Kinvent system does not have a foot leveler. So this isn't a game changer or make or break a deal. Sometimes you get into places that have wooden floors that are uneven, so it's nice to have that, but again, it's not a showstopper. So both systems allow you to reference your testing on normative data. VALD is kind of set in place. They have their already programmed normative data. So this is basically how you rank against your fellow athlete or your age demographic. Kinvent does a different way. They allow you to upload custom normative datas. So if you have some specifics or if you have your own normative data, you can upload it and say, okay, in my group of 20 people, this is what I found and this is how you rank in this group. So kind of some, helpful things if you need it, but you got to be careful. You could get good normative data or bad normative data. So really be kind of picky about how you use that. So the VALD system has a kind of a multi-part. The VALD system has a multi-part application. The VALD system has a multi-application the VALD system uses, both systems use apps, so you can use tablets, iPads, your phone. I think Kinvent does a better job. Kinvent has an all-in-one app solution, and so you can use all their hardwares on your phone, on your iPad, and it populates all the data, all your athletes in one system. VALD I find a little clunky and annoying. You can test with your iPad or your phone, depending on what hardware you're using, but you have to go into their web browser to look at the analytics. So this can take time. If you're with client or athlete, you're going to have to go into a web browser on your iPad and look up previous test scores, or you'll have to kind of after the session go in and do analyzing. So this is a huge time suck and can be a slowdown or bog down if you're trying to reference and get information about previous tests or compare this test to other tests. So one feature that I love about Kinvent is it allows you to do custom exercises. This isn't the case with VALD. They have a preset kind of exercise selection. So if you want to do something that is different, you can do it in smart mode, but you have to kind of take notes and you won't be able to reference it or find it later. Now with Kinvent, you can do the custom exercises and it'll have it as its own specific exercise. And so that's super helpful. I put pictures with mine to kind of remember what the test looks like, and you can kind of spell it out and push, and you can put tags that will help you find it a lot easier. So when you start getting, hundreds of tests, it's nice to just type in, baseball, and then all your baseball test specific things will come up. So that's super helpful. Another thing I really like that Kinvent software has is notes. So you can type in notes in the actual specific exercise. So if somebody's in a weird position or they do a compensation, or maybe you have the weight typed in wrong and you want to just put a note like, hey, do this, or go up with the weight next time, or we had an incorrect information, or the first test was bogus, you can see that and reference that. That doesn't happen on the VALD system. So I'll go into the force traces. The force trace is very basic on the VALD system. Unless you're an exercise scientist, physiologist, or someone who's worked in the lab with a lot of force traces, it's really hard to kind of pick through and decipher and interpret. Kinvent does a great job with the force traces. They have a very, very good visual report that comes out. It shows kind of bilaterally what's happening between the right and the left side. And it breaks things down into kind of categories. So you have the jumping phase, the landing phase, eccentric, propulsion, eccentric, braking, stopping, and then concentric or propulsion phases. And so these are color graphed and broken up so you can explain to a client or patient, hey, here's where you're good, here's where we can work on improve. You basically have to interpret all that with the VALD system. So I find the client interactions a lot easier, and it's kind of quicker and faster to show those analytics and data points with the VALD system, with the Kinvent system. Kinvent allows you to do protocols. You can customize protocols. So if you have five specific exercises that you want to do, you can kind of save them in an order, and you don't have to think through and kind of, well, what was I going to test? As far as my knowledge, VALD does not have that, and so you can do it with some of their other software, but not with the ForceDecks. So that's kind of not a big deal, but if you're looking to save time and you don't want to be scrambling or forget something, it's nice to have those kind of custom protocols in there. So the VALD system has a ton of KPIs. Overwhelmingly, you can get so much information. They have the customizable dashboard, so you can kind of type in what's specific to each client or athlete using those kind of specialized KPIs. Again, this can be a little overwhelming, but also it can be very specialized. I want to do counter jump movement for volleyball athlete, and that's what I want to, I want to get the jump height and maybe the propulsion kind of acceleration, velocity, and I want to look at that every time I open up their information. So you also can do that with the Kinvent system. Basically, you go into client profile, and then it shows you your previous tests. You can go back and type in like a Google search if you're looking for specific tests or protocols. One of the features that I really like about the Kinvent is they have a training or workout mode. And so this allows you to overload and progress an athlete or client. So you can do MVIC or maximum voluntary isometric contractions with both systems, the VALD and the Kinvent. But the Kinvent system allows you to do that training mode. And so you can kind of prescribe or custom design the progression. So if somebody's, let's say you're doing isometric squat, you could, say, okay, your isometric squat average is 200 pounds. I'm going to have you do 205 pounds this week, hold that for X time, and then go through and say, okay, next time we test this, we're going to do 210 pounds. And then the following week, we're going to do 215. So super cool. It saves your previous test, so you can kind of know where the person's at, and you can really dial in that kind of overload progression. And so the VALD software doesn't have that. It's just max force testing. And so, I think that's a missing link that is really helpful. I think that's the game changer. I have a client that's 87 that we kind of plateaued with his grip strength, and I started and switched to the training mode, and then he had kind of this visual feedback that he could compete with himself, if you will. And so each week or session, I'll bump up the task or the load a pound, and he'll try to beat his score. And then the next week we'll go up a pound and try to beat his score. So he has gone up significant, like 25% more outcome on his grip strength after plateauing with the maximal voluntary isometric contraction or just the normal standard dynamometer testing. So it's pretty neat with the training mode. So the center position measurements, the center position on the VALD ForceDecks, they call it the quiet stand report. I don't find it very helpful. It's very hard to interpret and understand. Now the Kinvent system, their quiet stand or bilateral stance has a lot of helpful visualizations. There's great reports that you can kind of, I think, explain center position better to patients, athletes, clients. And so that visual is a huge, helpful kind of tool that helps sell or get somebody to understand what you're talking about for the COP. One of the things that I find frustrating with the VALD system is the force is measured in newtons. I do not think that this is practical in the gym setting. It's hard to say, okay, well, you're 2,000 newtons or 5 newtons. How does that convey to weight and load in the gym? Now the Kinvent system kind of does everything in pounds and kilograms. So you could correlate, okay, this relates to a barbell exercise from an isometric test, and I can kind of guess that we're going to be around this load or blah 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 pounds or kilograms. So I think that's helpful. Another thing I really appreciate from the Kinvent system is that they allow you to use multiple devices at the same time. So you can use up to 5 devices on the same test. So this saves a ton of time. So you could use range of motion goniometer, the force plates, the K-Deltas, and a K-Myo and EMG, and you can have somebody do a squat and get bilateral stance. You can get range of motion, and then you can get the agonist antagonist kind of EMG information all at the same time. So this would save a ton of time in testing and get a lot of information. And so I've been experimenting with baseball swings. And so one of the things that I found out is that the Kinvent system allows you to record video while you're doing the smart mode or the auto detection. And the VALD ForceDecks does not allow you to record while using their auto detect mode. So the Kinvent, you can slow the movie speed down, and it's all directly correlated to the force traces or the jump graphs. So this is a game changer. Again, with that custom exercises, you can do, batting swings, golf swings on the force plates, record the video, and watch the video while you're going through slow-mo, break it down. So that's super cool. So you could use it with hockey or pretty much any type of sport where you have a asymmetry, swinging, tennis, javelin throwing. So pretty cool stuff on the sports performance side of things. VALD has set exercises, so there's no customization on exercises. So this makes it hard for record keeping. So the Kinvent system has customized exercises that you can add. You can add pictures or videos to them. You can type in whatever testing protocols, procedures you want. There's a ton of tags, so they're easy to find. And so that is a huge game changer and selling feature. Hello, Ryan Fritz here with Science of Cardio. I am comparing and doing a review with the VALD ForceDecks and the Kinvent K-Deltas. I've been using these for a couple years now, and as far as the hardware goes, they're very... As far as the hardware goes, they're very similar. I've never had any issues with either tool or force plate or decks, and they deliver for the most part the same thing. I really like the reports on Kinvent over the VALD. They're very basic on VALD. Bar graphs, the force trace is very basic. Unless you're an expert, it's kind of hard to collaborate and convey information and talk to your clients or patients or athletes about. Kinvent does a great job with putting visuals and helping understand what's happening when. So they have really good breakdowns. So they'll talk about the jump phase, the landing phase, the concentric phase, the propulsion, the eccentric phase, the braking or the stopping. So I think this is a helpful tool when explaining things to people that might not be familiar with the force traces or the graphs. So here you can see that the VALD report is showing some basic information, and we kind of have this bar graph. The Kinvent gives you a ton of information in a report. Their reports are very easily to look at, visualize, and kind of understand what's going on. I like how it gives you kind of bilateral second by second comparison of right to left sides as you're doing movements. Super cool stuff. And then if you want to talk to clients or patients or athletes, about specific things, or maybe you can use this for prescriptions or program designs of like, hey, your eccentric landing, stopping, braking's not real good. We need to work on that. And so it really allows you to customize programs and design things for each individual, and not just say, okay, well, you did good, or here's the standard kind of, let's do squats to improve jumping, and let's do jumps. So you can dial that in a lot more specifically. So customizing exercises, super cool feature that Kinvent allows you to do. This isn't a possibility with the VALD system. They have kind of set exercises, and record keeping can be really hard. So Kinvent has a customization exercise where you can add custom exercises. Kinvent allows you to add custom exercises, so you can name them whatever you want. That helps you in finding things later. You can add pictures. You can do your own custom protocols and procedures, and then they have a bunch of tags, so you can kind of go through and set up whatever you want. Very open format, super cool. If you want to do training mode and use certain tags to help find those exercises. Once you start getting a library of 100+ exercises, things get hard to find. You might have 4 different variations of a similar exercise. So very valuable. Then also the custom notes. The custom notes is super cool. If you're in a test and something happens and you want to write something down, you can save that in the custom notes. So compensations, maybe positions, you can kind of add that in. And then training mode, so you kind of can set the workout goal or the load goal, and then you have standard deviation and things that you can alter, time, tension, and so you can see great progression and work overload and increase the intensity, and do different things for your patients or clients. This is the selling feature for me. I can go in and go up a pound every week and keep on working, and maybe if we have a plateau, this is a great way to kind of custom design. So the VALD has a feature where you can customize a dashboard. Super cool. You can put whatever analytics in for a patient or client, KPIs, so whatever you want. The dashboard for the Kinvent, same thing. One of the things I like is they have a calendar, so you can go back and look by day, or you could schedule testing days, which is super cool. But they are set up kind of on a Google search, which I really like. You can go in and type in what you're looking for, and it'll pop up, and then you can kind of analyze or go back and look at data. So VALD also, again, because they're more group-based, you can look at group testing averages and kind of then go into each client and look at their KPIs or their data points, statistics. And so again, I think the information's similar for both companies. I think that Kinvent does a better job with the visual part of it. So here's a picture of the dashboard. You can kind of see, in this specialized group where people landing, who's leaderboards, number one, where do we need to work, who's doing good job. So both systems have references. They do a pretty good job. They both have libraries, learning tools that you can find on their websites. And so they have, reports and studies and videos, tutorials, education features. And so that's super helpful. I find that with these ForceDecks, they're really hard to find good information. Most of the stuff that you find is kind of a PhD level, explaining a force trace. It's really hard to relate to. Or you have bobbleheads just talking about things they like, and it's not really helpful, detailed, good, efficient information to kind of help out. But I think the companies that are providing this, the VALD and the Kinvent company, do a great job with education, and you can find out more information working with their team, their staff members. They both have systems set up that you can do continuing ed, or talk with somebody, ask questions if you have problems. So those have been both helpful for me. Awesome. So my final thoughts, I think, going from not having data collecting technology to getting a force deck or force plate, you're going to see, very good return on your investment. This stuff sells itself. People get very competitive. They want to beat their scores. How do I compare to other people? And so I think you're going to win by purchasing any force plate. And so I do think, for me personally, I really prefer the Kinvent. So I really like Kinvent because of the custom exercises, the ability to write custom notes. I've had issues with tests, and I've had to put stuff in to change things up. The annoyance on the VALD having to go into the web browser to look at analytics, it's kind of a turn off. And then the other thing that really sells, I think, the VALD systems is the training mode or the workout, being able to customize it and kind of set it for whatever your goals, your adaptations, and going in and also overload progressing it. The VALD system doesn't have that, and to me that is a game changer. That is what keeps people from getting injured, keeps them out of a plateau or getting better or getting progress, and getting that 0.5% to be a gold medalist versus a Olympic candidate. And so I would, if I had to pick or choose, I would definitely go with the Kinvent system because you can use multiple devices and you have all those customized features, custom protocols, custom notes, custom exercises, and then the training mode. So the VALD and the Kinvent systems are set up different on their financial kind of selling features. So VALD does a lease. So I have a 3-year lease with VALD, and I'm renting their force plates and their dynamometer systems. And so I pay a monthly fee. That allows me to access their team for questions, troubleshoot. If there's any issues, problems, things breaking, they'll send me another device with that 3-year contract. Now, after 3 years, I have to either renew a new contract or give the equipment back to the company. So you don't own the equipment after 3 years, you lease it, and then you re-up your contracts. So depending on how your system business is set up, that might not be a problem, might be a problem. But maybe you can upgrade and get new equipment in 3 years. But I'm sure the price point will change as time goes on, economy changes, and inflation goes up. For the Kinvent, they have a different system. You basically buy the hardware outright, so you pay just a fee. You pay just a flat kind of purchase price, and then they charge a monthly subscription for their upgrades. So there's a couple different tiers. So depending on what you use, what you need, if you want the works, it's a little over $100 a month, and you can do video, you can do custom exercises, you can set up custom training modes, and so there's a lot of features with that that allows you to use 5 kind of testing devices at the same time. And so to me, as a business owner, that is worth it. I like having the hardware in hand. If I want to sell it, I can sell it. They also do a buy-in trade-back system where if you have something that has a newer version, you can sell it back and trade it in. So I've done that before. And so again, they're kind of your preference on which one you like. Some people may like one versus the other, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. So Ryan Fritz signing off, saying thank you for listening. If you found this valuable, please send a comment, or you can message us, direct message us, Instagram, Facebook, email. There's a big learning curve to this, and hopefully I can kind of shorten that learning curve for newer people or people interested or getting into these ForceDecks or force plates. I think, my experience being able to assess both of them is very valuable. I've talked to people that kind of get one system and, they're talking about the system and they don't realize that there's other options or other things available. And so I kind of just went out on a limb and took a big dive and got both so I could look and see what do I like, what I don't like, which one's better, which one, is better for me as a practitioner versus clinical mode. And so for me, it's all about that end game of how do I get a client patient better. And so breaking through plateaus, working on troubleshooting, getting more information about people, diagnostics is super helpful. And then they can see it, they can see progress, they get their report card, before and after, here's what got better, here's what changed. To me, that is huge for selling your business, you, making revenue, return on your investment with these hardwares. I hope that was helpful, and please reach out, and hopefully I can do some more of these in the future. My pick for 2026 is the Kinvent K-Deltas. They allow you to do custom exercises, note-taking, training mode, custom protocols, and you can run up to 5 devices in the same test. So super savings on time, very efficient, and very practical use application and helpful. So I would go check them out. If you want information, I can set you up with a salesperson. And if you have questions, thoughts, comments, let me know. So again, Ryan Fritz with Science of Cardio signing out, saying thanks for watching. When I got the Kinvent ForceDecks, they came with a really nice carrying case. It's on rollers and it has handles. You can lock it up. I think you can put it on a plane pretty easily. It's very protected, a lot of foam in there. When I got the VALD ForceDecks, it did not come with anything. It came in a box. So you kind of have to carry it around in a box unless you want to purchase, a travel container or something to move it around. So for a very expensive equipment, it's nice to have a case to put it in and move it around. Both ForceDecks, force plates are very heavy. I'd say the combined weight of the two is about 60 pounds. So it's nice to have something on rollers that you can move around and use them and get them in and out of places portably.